The alien fleet entered Earth's orbit in a cascade of metallic ships that stretched across the sky like dark clouds heralding a storm. Their arrival was swift, and without warning, humanity had no time to react as the ships descended toward the planet with silent precision. They emitted pulses of energy that crippled satellites and communication systems, cutting the world off from any outside help. Earth's military scrambled, but they were ill-prepared for an invasion of this magnitude. The alien generals aboard the ships were confident in their superiority, their weapons and technology far beyond anything humans had ever developed. Their soldiers were equipped with armor that could withstand direct hits from artillery, and their weapons could vaporize entire cities in a single blast. Their technology far outpaced anything the human race had ever dreamed of. They began to mock the primitive guns the humans used to defend themselves. One general scoffed at the footage of human soldiers in their cities wielding rifles and pistols, as if they could stand a chance against their forces. The general's laughter echoed through the command room as he watched footage of a human soldier firing a handgun at an alien scout. He looked to his fellow commanders and shook his head, telling them that such a species was no more than an amusing curiosity, a challenge not worth their full attention. His words were sharp, dismissive. The human race, he declared, would be an easy conquest. They had no real weapons, no technology capable of even scratching their ship's armor. Their soldiers might as well be ants to be crushed beneath their boots. Without a second thought, it was clear to all who watched this display that they underestimated humanity. The alien leaders thought themselves invincible, but there was one human who heard their mocking words, who saw their arrogance unfold on a screen in front of him. Sergeant Jack Collins sat quietly in his small room at a U.S. military base. When the news of the invasion hit his ears, it wasn't the first time Earth had faced threats from the stars. Humanity had dealt with such rumors in the past, but this time there was no denying it. The aliens had come, and their ships filled the skies. Their energy pulses cracked the earth beneath their feet, and even with every military base mobilizing across the globe, Earth had no response to match their sheer might. The human resistance seemed doomed from the start. But Collins wasn't about to sit idly by while the world was under siege. His heart raced with determination as he watched the alien fleet descend upon the planet. He knew the odds were impossible, but in the quiet of his room he began to prepare his weapon, an old sniper rifle that had seen better days, a relic from a past war that he had never let go of. It had been his companion for years. Through countless battles across different fields and terrains, its weathered stock had felt the weight of every shot he'd ever taken. He picked it up with the calm of someone who knew this tool better than anything else in the world. The aliens laughed at human guns, but they didn't understand the one thing that set humans apart from every other species: their unyielding will to survive. Collins wasn't a soldier who relied on high-tech gadgets or advanced armor. He didn't need them. All he needed was a clear shot and the will to take it. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for everyone who still believed that Earth had a chance against the impossible. The sun had barely risen when the first explosions rocked the city streets. The alien ships deployed massive ground forces that tore through buildings with ease as the invaders began their assault on the world's most populated areas. Their weapons left no room for hesitation. Entire blocks were obliterated by powerful energy blasts that sent dust and debris into the air. Humans barely had time to react as chaos erupted in the streets. The military was quickly overwhelmed by the overwhelming power of the alien technology. Tanks and jets were torn apart by energy beams that left nothing behind. Soldiers fought bravely, but were no match for the invaders, who moved with surgical precision and overwhelming firepower. Every attempt at counterattack was met with instant retaliation that left entire units decimated by alien weaponry. The invaders marched onward undeterred by the human resistance. They seemed unstoppable, but amidst the carnage, a single figure stood alone on a rooftop, high above the chaos. A figure with a rifle slung over his shoulder. The sniper's scope caught every movement below. His calm eyes studied the battlefield, his mind sharp and focused. He knew this city well better than anyone else. In fact, he could read the terrain like a map, and he understood the alien forces in ways they would never understand him. Sergeant Jack Collins crouched low on the rooftop. His fingers tightened around the grip of his old rifle. Its familiar weight felt like an extension of himself. He knew this weapon like a trusted companion. And today it would be the weapon that made the difference. As the battle raged below, the aliens moved in perfect formation, their sleek armored suits making them nearly invulnerable to standard gunfire. Their movements were fast and efficient. They were prepared for everything the humans threw at them. But they hadn't accounted for one thing. They hadn't accounted for the sniper hidden high above the battlefield who watched and waited. And when the time was right, when the alien commander stepped into view, Collins squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out with a precision only a skilled marksman could deliver. The bullet tore through the air and struck the commander's chest. With a resounding thud, the alien leader crumpled to the ground as its lifeless body fell into the chaos below. A ripple of confusion spread through the alien ranks. The invaders paused for a brief moment, uncertain of what had just happened. The humans had no advanced technology, no special weapons, yet somehow one of their own had killed an alien commander in a single shot. The aliens quickly realized their mistake. They had laughed at human guns, but now they were beginning to understand they had underestimated the humans' resolve and ingenuity. The confusion was short-lived, though, as the invaders regrouped. Their leaders issued commands, and their forces advanced again with renewed aggression. But that single shot had planted a seed of doubt in their minds. They weren't facing an enemy that could be easily crushed. They were facing something more dangerous, a species that would fight back with every ounce of strength, even when the odds were impossible. As the alien forces continued to push forward, Collins remained where he was, high above the battlefield, moving from one position to the next. Each shot he took was calculated, each target chosen with cold precision. He was a ghost to the invaders, a shadow moving through the chaos with one goal in mind: to prove that humanity was not a species to be mocked or underestimated. Not now, not ever. The chaos on the ground intensified as the alien forces struggled to regroup. Their soldiers scattered in confusion as each shot rang out from Collins' position. One by one, their elite troops were falling without ever seeing the sniper's face. The once unstoppable invaders were beginning to realize that they were not alone in this war. They had underestimated the tenacity of humanity, but the humans weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting for something deeper, something the aliens hadn't expected. Hope. As Collins watched the unfolding chaos through his scope, he knew this was only the beginning of the alien response. They wouldn't leave him alone for long. But he also knew that every alien soldier he dropped was a message to the rest of the world that humanity would not surrender no matter the odds. The sniper's presence had begun to rattle the invaders. It wasn't just that they were losing soldiers, it was the fact that they couldn't find the enemy. They were up against a species that could barely hold its own in terms of technology, had somehow created a soldier who was making them bleed. It was a humiliating realization for the alien generals and commanders who had dismissed Earth's people as inferior. The more they thought about it, the more it became clear that the humans were fighting back with a ferocity that couldn't be quantified. Their technology might not match theirs, but their ingenuity and sheer determination were proving to be just as deadly. The alien forces had no idea where Collins was hiding, or how he managed to move so swiftly through the chaos. Each shot he took was a warning, a challenge to the invaders that Earth would not simply roll over and accept their fate. The alien fleet commanders convened once again to discuss the growing threat posed by the sniper. One general spoke of launching a full-scale operation to hunt him down. Another suggested they use their superior tech to flush him out with heat sensors or drones, but each suggestion was met with failure. Their technology could detect heat signatures and electronic signals, but Collins had learned to use the environment to his advantage. He hid in the shadows of the city, rooftop to rooftop, blending with his surroundings like a ghost. The aliens were beginning to realize that their own methods of warfare couldn't match the cunning of a human who knew the land better than any advanced soldier could ever hope to. Collins moved with purpose, always staying 2 steps ahead. His mind was focused, his body was a machine that responded to every movement, every sound, his breath steady. As he calculated the next move of the enemy, he was hunting them now. Each alien soldier that crossed his line of sight was another target eliminated with ruthless efficiency. They had no idea where he was or what was coming next. But Collins knew he couldn't keep this up forever. The invaders would adapt, they would learn from their mistakes, and start countering him with every trick in their book, so he needed to make every shot count. And with each passing hour, the human resistance grew stronger. Soldiers rallied around the message that Collins had sent out: one shot, one kill. They knew that there was a spark of life in the fight for Earth, and it was being fueled by the sniper who had already proved that a single human could change the course of history. The tension in the air was palpable as the alien commanders realized the full scope of the danger they faced. Collins had proven to be a nightmare for them, a specter in the shadows that refused to die. No matter how many of their soldiers they sent into the fray, the sniper kept picking them off one by one, and the more the invaders tried to find him, the more elusive he became. They had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back, and now they were beginning to pay the price with every dead alien soldier. Their once confident superiority was beginning to crack. The alien generals huddled around a holographic table, their faces grim, as they discussed their next move. They couldn't afford to let a single human outsmart them for much longer. This sniper was a threat to their entire invasion. If they didn't act quickly, their mission would fail. But they also knew they had to be careful. They couldn't just throw everything at him blindly. They needed to trap him, lure him into a position where they could surround and neutralize him. The first plan was simple enough: send in a wave of smaller strike teams who would come through the city on foot using infrared and thermal scanners to flush him out. They believed that with their superior tech, they could overwhelm him. But Collins had already anticipated this. He had studied the movements of the invaders like a predator studying his prey, and he knew what they would do next. The streets of the city were a labyrinth of dark alleys, towering buildings, and abandoned structures. Collins had spent his entire life moving through terrain like this. Whether it was a battlefield or a hunting ground, he had learned to use the environment to his advantage. And now he would use that knowledge to evade their every move. As the alien soldiers began to fan out looking for any sign of movement, Collins positioned himself high above them, perched on a rooftop in perfect silence. He knew they were coming, but he was patient, waiting for the perfect moment. He heard the soft hum of alien boots on the pavement, the click of their weapons being readied. He smiled to himself, knowing that this was the moment he'd been waiting for. He raised his rifle and took the first shot. The alien soldier dropped without a sound, his body crumpling to the ground in an instant. Before anyone even had a chance to react, another shot rang out, taking down another alien who had been too slow to take cover. The aliens scattered in every direction as panic spread through their ranks. They hadn't anticipated that their own superior technology wouldn't guarantee them victory. They didn't know how to fight someone like Collins, someone who could remain unseen even in the midst of chaos. But this time the aliens were ready. They began to adapt quickly and sent in their elite hunter units trained to track and eliminate targets with precision and speed. They were faster, stronger than the average alien soldier. Their suits enhanced their physical abilities, and their senses were sharper, more attuned to the environment. They were the perfect tool for locating and killing a lone sniper. But Collins wasn't afraid. He knew the hunters would come for him. He could feel it in his bones. The air around him seemed to hum with the anticipation of the hunt. He remained perfectly still, watching his every move through the scope of his rifle, waiting for the first sign of movement. He knew this was going to be a fight unlike any other, but he had learned long ago that the best way to deal with a predator was to become one himself, to turn the hunt back onto them. And that was exactly what he intended to do. The alien hunters moved through the city with calculated precision, their movements swift and silent as they combed the streets, their enhanced suits allowing them to blend with the shadows, to hear the slightest noise, to detect the smallest movements. They were the perfect predators, and they were closing in on Collins with every passing moment. But the sniper was ready, his heart beat steady in his chest, his eyes scanning the city below with a predator's focus. He could feel their presence, the way the air shifted, the faint hum of their suits just on the edge of his hearing. He knew the hunters were out there somewhere, watching, waiting for him to make a mistake. But Collins didn't make mistakes, not anymore. Years of training had taught him to move like water, to adapt to every situation. And these hunters, they were no different from the game he'd hunted in the wild back home in the mountains. Only this time, the stakes were higher, and the consequences deadlier. The first hunter emerged from an alleyway. Collins saw him immediately through his scope. The alien silhouette was almost imperceptible against the night, But to Collins it stood out like a beacon. He had learned to read the smallest signs, the way light reflected off metal, the faintest shift in the ground. As the hunter's boots moved across the pavement, he exhaled slowly and took the shot. The bullet flew through the air and struck the hunter square in the chest. The alien's body jerked backward and collapsed to the ground without a sound. But Collins knew this wasn't over, not yet. The remaining hunters had heard the shot and were already moving in closer, their enhanced senses picking up on his position. The sniper had been a ghost until now, but now they knew he was out there, and they would hunt him like a pack of wolves closing in on their prey. Collins didn't hesitate. He moved quickly, shifting positions from rooftop to rooftop, using the buildings for cover. He knew the hunters would expect him to stay in one place, but he had already anticipated that their training was meant to corner him, to force him into a trap. He wasn't going to make that mistake again. He moved deeper into the heart of the city, where the buildings were taller and the shadows longer, where the noise of the battle could cover his every step. He became part of the city itself, blending into the concrete and steel. The second hunter appeared from the shadows, his eyes scanning the rooftops, his weapon raised and ready. Collins remained perfectly still, his breath slow, his eyes locked on the alien's every movement. The hunter was searching for him, but Collins wasn't there, not anymore. The sniper moved again. This time, he was behind the hunter before the alien knew what had happened. Another shot rang out, and the hunter fell lifeless to the ground, his body crumpling in the dark alley where Collins had once been. But now he was gone. The aliens were getting desperate now. They knew the sniper was picking them off with surgical precision, and their advanced technology had no answer for his guerrilla tactics. They were being hunted, their confidence faltering as each hunter fell one by one. Collins wasn't just outwitting them, he was making them question everything they thought they knew about war, about Earth, about humanity itself. They had come to conquer a weak planet, but now they were facing an enemy they didn't understand, a single human who had turned their own tactics against them. The alien generals watched their forces unravel on the screens before them, frustration building as they realized that they were losing ground to one man armed with nothing more than a rifle and the will to survive. Collins wasn't just fighting for his own survival. Now he was fighting for the survival of every person on Earth, and he was winning. The alien generals sat in stunned silence as their forces were decimated one by one. They had not anticipated this kind of resistance. Humanity had no advanced weapons, no armor that could stand against their firepower. And yet somehow one soldier was making them look like fools. Collins was more than just a sniper now. He was a symbol of resistance, a single thread of defiance woven into the very fabric of the invasion. As alien soldiers continued to fall, their leaders scrambled to formulate a new plan. But no matter how many strategies they devised, they couldn't find a way to counter the human sniper. They had tried everything from using heat signatures to deploying elite hunter units, but nothing worked. The more they pushed, the more Collins adapted to their tactics and turned them back against them. The aliens were beginning to lose their confidence. They hadn't realized just how dangerous human ingenuity could be. They had come to Earth believing they were facing a primitive species with no real chance of victory. But Collins was proving them wrong at every turn. And the more his success grew, the more the human resistance spread across the planet. Word of his strikes had reached other cities and military bases across the globe, and soon more and more soldiers took up arms, inspired by the sniper, who was taking down entire battalions of the invaders with nothing but a rifle and a will to survive. Earth was no longer a planet on the brink of defeat. It was a planet ready to fight back, ready to remind the aliens that they weren't the only species in the universe that could adapt and survive. Meanwhile, Collins remained in the shadows, picking off alien soldiers with precision and purpose. He knew his time was running out. The aliens were learning fast, and soon they would adapt to his tactics. But for now, he had a mission to complete. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for the future of humanity. And with every alien soldier he took down, he was sending a message to the invaders that they had made a grave mistake in underestimating the human race. As the days passed, the tide of the war began to shift. The once confident alien commanders now found themselves scrambling to contain the growing resistance everywhere. They turned. There were human fighters standing their ground, from urban warfare in the cities to guerrilla tactics in the forests and mountains. The humans were everywhere, and they were willing to die to protect their world, and Collins was at the heart of it all. His success had inspired a movement. He had become a rallying cry for all of Earth's military forces. The world was coming together under the banner of resistance, and even as the alien forces regrouped and tried new tactics, they were beginning to realize that the humans weren't just fighting to survive, they were fighting to win. Collins had become the symbol of that victory, the lone man who refused to back down against impossible odds, and who was showing the world that Earth was far from defenseless. It was a war that would go down in history as the moment humanity proved its worth in the eyes of the universe. But for Collins, it wasn't about glory or fame. It was about something far more important. He wasn't just fighting for his own survival, or even the survival of his planet. He was fighting for the survival of every person on Earth who had ever believed in the impossible, who had ever believed that no matter how dire the situation, no matter how hopeless the cause, there was always a chance to fight back, always a chance to win. And with every shot he took, he was proving that to the invaders and to the entire world. The alien commanders were no longer just frustrated, they were enraged. The sniper had become a symbol of everything they had underestimated about humanity. They had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, but now they were facing a world that refused to yield. The resistance was growing stronger with every passing day, and the sniper who had started it all remained elusive and deadly. The invaders had tried everything to catch him, from drones and thermal scans to brute force tactics. But Collins had adapted to every move they made. His knowledge of the terrain and his ability to blend into the environment made him nearly impossible to track. The alien generals gathered once more around their holographic table, their faces grim as they watched the fallout of their failure. They couldn't afford to let one human stand between them and victory. They had seen what he was capable of, and now they knew they had to take drastic measures to stop him. But how could they defeat someone who seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once? The decision was made. They would need to launch a full-scale assault on the city where Collins had made his mark. They would flush him out with overwhelming force. No more small units or elite hunters. This time they would send everything they had, every troop, every drone, every weapon, to eliminate the threat and end the human resistance once and for all. But Collins knew this was coming. He had sensed it in the way the air had changed in the quiet moments before the storm. He could feel the weight of the invaders' preparations, the gathering of forces, the sense of urgency in their movements. They were no longer treating him like an annoyance. They were treating him like the threat he had become. And he was ready for it. The day the invasion forces launched their full-scale assault on the city, Collins was already in position, perched atop a building overlooking the streets below. He had studied the enemy's movements, and he knew they would come for him with everything they had. They would send wave after wave to root him out. But Collins had no intention of being caught. He had planned for this. He had already mapped out every escape route, every position, every potential trap the aliens would set for him. And he had a counter for each one. He wasn't just playing defense anymore. He was playing offense. He wasn't just trying to survive. He was trying to take the fight to them, to prove that humanity's will to fight couldn't be broken, not by invaders, not by overwhelming firepower, not by any force in the universe. Collins had learned long ago that the key to victory wasn't in overwhelming strength. It was in knowing when to strike, and when to disappear, when to blend in with the world around him, and when to make his presence known like a thunderclap in the middle of a quiet storm. As the first wave of aliens moved through the streets below, Collins remained motionless like a ghost, waiting for the perfect moment. And when that moment arrived, he fired with deadly accuracy. His shot took down the first alien soldier without warning, sending a ripple of confusion through the invader ranks. They had anticipated fighting him, but they hadn't anticipated his ability to vanish after every strike. Like a phantom moving through the chaos with purpose and precision, the aliens scrambled to find him, but Collins was always one step ahead. His shots rang out like thunder, his rifle a symphony of death as he picked them off one by one. And with every fallen soldier, the alien forces were reminded that no matter how many of them there were, no matter how powerful their technology was, there was still one thing they had overlooked: the heart of humanity, the will to fight back, no matter what, and Collins was the embodiment of that spirit. The final assault had begun. The full-scale invasion was no longer a matter of tactics and strategies. The aliens had committed everything they had left to wipe out the last symbol of humanity's defiance. But Collins had already seen through their plan. He had anticipated their desperation, their decision to launch everything they had against him, and humanity itself. He knew this was their last gamble, everything they had sent, all at once, every soldier, every ship, every weapon that could strike at the heart of the city he had fought so hard to protect. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for the soul of the human race. The final confrontation began as alien forces surged through the streets, their ships filling the skies above, while their ground units marched through the city in perfect formation, their energy weapons lighting up the darkness, and every corner seemed to echo with the sound of their march. But Collins was everywhere, and nowhere at once, his presence a ghostly reminder to the invaders that they were not fighting a war for domination. They were fighting a war for respect. He moved quickly across the rooftops, striking from unexpected angles. The precision of each shot a testament to his training and determination. No alien soldier could hide from him. No matter how advanced their technology was, the ground below became a minefield of fallen invaders. As Collins danced between shadows, his rifle a blur of deadly accuracy, each shot was a message, and as more aliens fell, the message grew clearer. Humanity had finally found its voice, and it was louder than anything the invaders could ever imagine. But even as Collins kept up his relentless assault, he knew that this final push wasn't just about taking down soldiers. It was about taking down the core of their invasion. They had underestimated him from the start, and now they were seeing the full extent of the human spirit. They hadn't expected to face a species that would fight back to this degree. But now they were seeing it firsthand, and it was breaking their resolve. The alien leaders on their command ships watched in disbelief as their forces were systematically destroyed by a single human with a rifle. No matter how many ships they launched, no matter how many soldiers they threw into the fight, Collins kept taking them down one by one. And with each strike, the alien command began to question the validity of their mission. They had come to Earth to conquer and claim it as their own. But now they were realizing the true cost of their arrogance. The humans were no longer the weak, helpless species they had once believed them to be. They were proving that even against insurmountable odds, they would never give up, never stop fighting. Collins wasn't just making them bleed. He was making them rethink everything they had known about war, about civilization, and about Earth itself. As the last wave of alien forces moved in with all their remaining might, Collins stood on a rooftop, his rifle aimed directly at the alien command ship hovering above. He had made it to this point, to this final moment, and he knew what he had to do. He took a deep breath, steadied his aim, and with the precision that had carried him through this entire war, he fired. The shot rang out, and with a deafening explosion, the command ship erupted in a brilliant display of fire and destruction. The remaining alien forces below fell into chaos. Their leadership had been destroyed, and their unity shattered. The war was over. Collins stood alone on the rooftop. As the dust settled around him, he had won. But the victory wasn't just his, it was the victory of every soldier, every civilian who had fought back against the invaders, the victory of humanity itself, who had proven that no matter the size of the enemy, no matter the odds, humanity would never bow down, never surrender, and would fight until their last breath to protect the world they called home.